Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's really great to be back here. I started here 25 years ago. And I want to tell you why I came here 25 years ago. I'm not sure you'll understand it. I'm not sure I do. But, well, just a quick note about Shabbat. During my 5 years here at Temple High, which hands down was the best 5 years in congregational rabbinate for me, with our team here. I know you all worked here longer than I did at Temple High, but for me it was clearly a highlight. And during those 5 years, Ruthie, my wife, she was either nursing or pregnant the entire time. Except probably like the week or two after giving birth, she didn't miss one Shabbat. She was here with the kids every Friday night, and never once did she hear me preach, because she never made it into the sanctuary. Because, there were hundreds of people in here, but there was life all over this place. There were kids running in there. People remember, I would march in at the end with I would the Pied Piper. I'd bring all the kids in and would bring them up here for Kiddush at the end. And so she never heard me preach. She didn't care. But it was, we're probably successful marriage as a consequence. But there's something about that, which is why we came here. There's an old Hasidic story about a young Torah scholar, in the old world, who insisted that he had to go to Nikolsburg to study with the Rabbi there. And his father was like, that's far away, that's expensive. You could study Torah here. You don't need to go there. And his son insisted, says, no, I have to go there. That's the place to study. The Rabbi in Nikolsburg. Right? Rabbi Shmelniki was actually his name. Shmelki, excuse me. And so they saved up the money and they sent him away. And he went away for a year, and then, because, it was too much to travel, and after a year he came back. And his father said, so, no? Was it worth it to be there and, study Torah there versus here? And he says, it was unbelievable. It was the best year of my life. It was incredible. And his father said, so, what did you learn? He says, in the entire year, I learned one pasuk, one verse, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. He says, hey, it took you all year and all this, and all you learned is one verse? He said, yes, because it took me an entire year to understand what it was to love myself. Right? And so we have the gift of that line, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, is part of this week's double portion. You should love your neighbor as yourself. What does it mean to love yourself? So you really have to look at the context. You have to look at, first of all, the context of all the Jewish people. That's too long. Probably the whole of Torah would help, but that's too long. So let's just look at the one verse. Right? The verse starts off, it says, it's just one verse, Leviticus 19:18, right? Do not take revenge nor bear a grudge against the children of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Adonai. Right? That's the whole verse. So what does it mean, right? Don't take revenge. That means if someone comes to borrow a cup of sugar, and if you go to borrow a cup of sugar from your neighbor and they don't lend it to you, and then the next day they come to borrow for you, and you say, oh, well, you didn't lend to me, so I'm not going to lend any to you, that is taking revenge. And then it says, but don't bear a grudge. So let's say you go to borrow a sugar, they don't lend it to you, and then the next day they ask to borrow one from you and say, well, even though you didn't lend to me yesterday, but I'm going to lend you a cup of sugar today, right? That is bearing a grudge. So you have to understand that to understand what is love your neighbor as yourself. And then the final phrase is actually the most important one. I am Adonai, your God. Loving your neighbor is loving yourself. The rabbis in the Yerushalmi, they actually talk about slicing meat, but I like to think of it as slicing, imagine if a nice corn rye and you're going to slice it. And it's always got, the corn rye's got that really hard crust, but that's what makes it so good. Now let's say your hand slips while you're trying to cut it, and I'm right-handed, and I'd say with the knife I cut the hand holding the bread. It would be absurd for my left hand to pick up the knife and take revenge on the right hand. Right? Absurd. Right? Loving your neighbor as yourself is how do you see yourself that actually we're both the left hand and the right hand of God. We are part of one and the same being. We are all together on this journey. To love yourself, right, is to be able to give to your neighbor like your right hand giving to your left hand. Right? That, right, understanding it on that level, that's what it's all about. Where there is no separation between who we are, because, yeah, I could say my right hand and my left hand are separate, especially on the tennis court. One's much better. But to live that every day, right, that, right, all part of the oneness between ourselves, right? And that's why the verse ends with, right, I am Adonai. Right, if you say that, you have to say the words, I am God. Which means that if God is the oneness of everything and we're all a piece of that, then I am God and you are God and we are all one and the same. So what does this have to do with why I decided to come to Temple High 25 years ago? Because you and you and you and you, and especially Levi, because we used to have like Pesach together when he was 3. It's true. And me, we're all one. And something that we created here on Shabbos and in family school and in Torah study and in the healing center and everything we did here was filled with that love. And I think I knew that, and that's why I came to Temple High 25 years ago.
Yasher koach.
I now get to say, please turn to page 16 and rise for the bar call.